Good evening, or good day, or whatever the time it is that you're listening to this thing. This is John Huey, and this is episode 10. I'm here with Michael Tingley,
Hello?
and I'm here with Dennis Walsh, our
Hello.
guest for today. And the title of this, it's sort of a generic title. It's a conversation about AA with an old friend. All right. Dennis is, in fact, an old friend. We spent many a year in the basement of in the conference room and the basement
Right.
of the old AME church between 15th and 16th Street on M in Washington, a very historic building that I believe I mentioned before.
And what were you doing in the basement?
Michael loves to tweak me, okay, about this shit. Excuse me, but I was attending for many years what was called an AA meeting.
Right.
And it was a real AA meeting. It wasn't my atheist agnostic AA meeting. This was an AA meeting where there were people in the room that believed in those ridiculous 12 steps and who had meetings about something called the Big Book, which I never really had any patience with whatsoever. And I never attended any of those meetings when they talked about that. But I attended a lot of the regular meetings there, and it's a very unusual room. It was a very liberal room in a very liberal church. Okay. I'm very comfortable with the people that run that.
And roughly when was this? What era are you talking
This
about?
goes back. Well, I first started going to that meeting in January of 1987. Dennis and I must have met somewhere in the early 90s, probably. And, I was, we were all very busy, all professional people down in that room. And Dennis was there continuously, I believe, until I don't remember what year you moved to Philly, but somewhere in there your career took you to Philadelphia.
Yeah, it was about 2013.
Yeah, we knew each other for a long, long time
Mhm.
down in that meeting. Dennis and I know each other, uh, I would say, extremely well by the shares and the inferences of many, many years.
Right.
So, and you met Dennis briefly the other day when we were discussing what we're going to do here. And I do send links to the podcast to some of my old associates from that room, many of whom are, one of whom is a deacon in an Episcopal church, and, other people of disparate belief. I never noticed anything really weird about Dennis and his belief system, but like I did about some of the others. But, most certainly he wasn't of our persuasion, of the
Right.
atheist persuasion. And we spent a lot of time in that room together until, of course, I got to the point where I could no longer in good conscience be a member of AA. And I've talked about that in this forum probably more than once, and I don't need to speak about that. But for many years, we were down there and we were together. Now, I do send a link to some of these folks that I knew from that meeting because they're old friends. And, some of them I just like to sort of tweak them a little bit because I know it's going to maybe tune them up a little bit when they get this stuff. But I was mildly surprised when I got it was on our fan mail page. We have a fan mail page, Michael. Did you know that? They
I didn't know that. No.
Yeah. They
Fan
have some
mail?
some kind of buried in the software somewhere. There's this fan mail page. And I get a fan letter from Dennis Walsh telling me how much he likes the podcast, but saying that he had a few issues with how we characterize what I believe is still to him some sort of beloved program or something like that. Okay. So I thought about it for a minute, and I thought, oh shit, Dennis is a graduate of a very fancy, very prominent, very highly rated law school. And it is. I looked it up. It's still number 14 in the United States
Yes,
out of
that's true.
several hundred law schools. It's a Cornell. It's a very good place. It's a fancy joint, is Cornell, all the way around. And, he had a lot of experience and a very responsible executive positions in the United States government and in dealing with labor issues. And he's a fairly formidable guy in my estimation because, yeah, hey, he's a Washington lawyer, okay, a good one, big boy, Washington lawyer. And I thought, oh shit, I'm gonna have to go round and round with Dennis about AA. But and with some trepidation, I had an initial conversation with him about this. And it seems that we're not going to have a brawl here, okay? We're going to be able to discuss what we have to discuss about this topic rationally, which is a great thing because we're living in irrational times and we don't need any more squalling and bawling on the internet. There'll be enough of that the next few months to last us several lifetimes. So, here we go. I'm going to just sort of turn the microphone or whatever it is over to Dennis, and he's going to tell us what he has on his mind, and we'll react.
Thank you, John. Thanks, John. I wanted to start by saying that I have the utmost respect for what you guys are doing in terms of this podcast, and in terms of offering a different way to recovery for people who are uncomfortable with the program that I'm in. I do not believe that AA has a monopoly on recovery, and I think that people who think it does, I think that's kind of dangerous, actually. And I also understand why folks like yourself with very strong atheist non-beliefs would be uncomfortable in the AA program. So I don't dispute that at all, and I really respect what you guys are doing. Where I differed, I guess, was I heard some things on your various podcasts, which I thought were mischaracterizations of the AA program, and I thought maybe a different point of view might be helpful, at least to some of your listeners. And also, I think that to some extent, mischaracterizing the program can scare people away from it who might benefit from it. Now, maybe they wouldn't, but I'd hate to see people scared away unnecessarily. So anyway, let me start by saying, I've had my differences with this program too, with the AA program. I came in 1983, and I had just finished law school, and I came in, as most of us. I wasn't on a winning streak. I had been through years of fairly serious depression, had been hospitalized at that point twice for depression and suicidal depression, and I came in. And was still on certain antidepressive and anti-anxiety medications. And so after a while, and I think in my first year of sobriety, after maybe a year and a half, I actually left AA myself. I said and it was because there were people saying things like, you're not really sober if you're taking medication, okay, and you really need to stop doing it, and all these different things. And I didn't like people telling me that, and they weren't doctors, and and I was under a doctor's care, and I wasn't abusing anything. So I left, and I said, I attempted sobriety on my own, and after a couple of months, it didn't work out so well. I didn't start drinking, but I decided to come back. But when I came back, um, I I said, look, I'm doing this for myself. I'm doing this not to make anybody else happy. I'm doing this. I have to do it. I have to be sober. I'm not going to get on with my life. So I am going to take this program. I'm going to keep an open mind, but I'm going to take what I need and I'm going to leave the rest. Okay. So, hell with those people who want to tell me I can't take medication. I mean, hell with the people who really want to tell me anything. From that point on, what the way I've approached recovery is that the people I listen to are the people who talk about their own experiences and their past experiences and their experiences and how they recovered and how they're doing now. Okay, it's what we call experience, strength, and hope, of course. And the only thing that I share about is my own experience. Okay, I'm not today. I'm not speaking for AA or in any way. I'm only talking about my own experience. But that's the only thing that I listen to and that I relate is my own experience, because that's how I've stayed sober, is by listening to other people's experiences and their strength and their hope. And that's how I feel that I actually don't really disagree too much with the way that John and Michael, the way you've described how you've recovered and how you stay sober, because it's the same thing for me. I mean, it's the power of example. Well, first of all, I did have to make a decision. I mean, I stood at a jumping point. I was going to jump off a bridge in Ithaca, New York, and I decided instead I'm going to go to a meeting the next day. And so I had to make a decision because I the decision was to live, and to stay sober, stay sober. And then I had to start associating with other alcoholics and listening to them, listening to the stories of people's experience, and identifying with them, and learning to share my own experiences. And of course, I learned, as you've described, the key word, abstinence. And the way that we do it is one day at a time. I make a decision. I'm not going to drink. Okay. And that decision became easier over the years. I mean, I don't have to wake up in the morning and say, oh, I'm not going to drink today. I mean, I don't have to think about it that much, but it is one day, each day I have to decide to be abstinent. And then through the sharing process and the identifying, I've learned that I need to help others too by sharing my own experience. And that's keeping me sober. So I agree with all of those things. What I guess where I part with you and Michael is that I do believe there is spirituality in that, in the sharing, in the identifying, and in the learning to share, and in the helping others. But it's not. I don't. And I don't hesitate when I talk about it. I don't hesitate to use the word God. But God is not. God is a word to me. I mean, it's not. It's a very undefined word. I mean, I believe that there is spirituality that is communicated from person to person. It's in us all, and it's the process of sharing and identifying and helping others that is spiritual. All right, so that's and you may not agree with that, and that's fine. But what I'm saying is, I have been perfectly able to take what I need and leave what I don't agree with in the program. And I think that is possible for anyone, all right? That they can believe whatever they want to believe, however they want to believe it. And as for the steps, I take the words from the Alcoholics Anonymous book literally. They say, here are the steps which are suggested as a program of recovery. I take them as suggestions. And some of them I believe are good suggestions for me personally. Doing some self-examination, even communicating that self-examination to another person. Thinking about people that I might make amends to, and then making amends to them. All those things I think are important. And yes, I pray, all right? But prayer to me is more like meditation. I mean, prayer to me, I use words and I pray to something. I don't know what it is really, but I pray. But it's a way of stopping the craziness in my own head and getting some perspective on life, getting some perspective as to where I fit into things and where I don't fit in. And just taking a couple of minutes, and that helps me, and it helps me to move on and give me perspective. In the same way that going to meetings gives me perspective. Okay, I think I heard you describe this on your last episode, John, about how you go into meetings with all this crap going on in your head about work and everything, and then you come out feeling better because you've shared that and other people have shared their experiences. I get the same feeling. I mean, I get the same feeling. I guess where I differ a little bit with you is I think that feeling comes from something spiritual. Now, I'm not going to even attempt to define what it is. I think my brain is too puny to define what this God or this spiritual thing is. All right. I just think it's there. And I am willing I have some faith in it, that it's helping me to get and to stay sober. And what I'm saying is, I think that there's room in the program for anyone who has similar kinds of beliefs, or it's even something different. Okay. And you and Michael and others who are atheists may not have any of those beliefs, and you may feel uncomfortable in the program. I've seen it. I mean, I've seen some of the same things that you've talked about. People patronizing people who say they're atheist and agnostic and saying, you're going to believe eventually. I mean, if you read the chapter in We Agnostics, I'll relate one more story before
our favorite.
I'm sure it's your favorite. I have a story about that. I had a person come to me, a newcomer come to me after a meeting one time and say, what I'm really having trouble with is this God thing. Okay. And I just don't know how to reconcile. I don't remember whether he said he's atheist or agnostic, but he said, I don't believe in it, and I don't know how to reconcile that. And I said, very naively, I said, you should read the chapter We Agnostics, okay? And maybe that will help you. All right. Now, unfortunately, I hadn't read it myself in a while, and I should never have said that to him, because he came back to me a day or two later and said, I read that chapter. And it's a trick. I mean, it says you're welcome here, okay? But then at the end, it comes around and says, but, eventually you're going to believe, all right?
Yep.
And I went back and I read it, and it certainly reads that way. So I understand that you feel uncomfortable, and I get it. I also think there are even passages in that chapter which say, but you can believe whatever you want. All right. And you can believe however you want.
It's a shill. It's a lie.
I get it. But you come around to the end of the chapter and it kind of says, well, you'll join us eventually, and God, you'll find God, or God will find you. Okay, so I get it. And I think that a lot of the literature is, if I believed as you do or didn't believe as you do, I'd feel very uncomfortable with it too. But I'm able to put some of that aside. I guess I'm saying that it's possible to put that aside and just go with what works for people. Right. And I don't think it's a cult. I think there are people who have tried to make themselves into gurus and into spokespeople or whatever. And there are people who have gathered around them as a personality cult. And I think that's terrible. I think it's just, but that's people, I don't think that's the AA program. And I don't think it's a cult, because I don't believe it demands that you believe anything in particular. Okay. That's my view of it, and that's worked for me for 41 years. Okay. And I believe it's worked for others too. So I just think there's room. There's room for all sorts of beliefs and non-beliefs. But So that's where I'm at, and so I guess what got me when I've listened to which I continue to listen to, because I think you have a lot of good things to say and are doing a lot of good things for a lot of people. But some of the harsh criticisms of the program, that it's a cult, that people, they demand that you do this and this and this, and it hasn't been my experience, and I don't think it has to be anyone's experience if they take it the right way. So anyway, that's where I'm at.
Yeah, and that's let me
Thank you,
just
Dennis.
thank you very much. Yeah, the results for you are indisputable.
Mm-hmm.
I know a lot about your story and where you were and where you came from and where you are now. And, the results speak for themselves. I mean, you've got 41 years of sobriety, a great family, a wonderful legacy career, and, working with others to, benefit society. And, you have a great dog and wonderful grandchildren, and you've got the well-earned leisure and time to pursue your interest in art and whatever else pleases you. And that's all, I'm sure you would say yourself, positively related to the fact that you got and stayed sober. None of it was possible without that. And in that, we share it all. I think you know enough about me to know that I'm far luckier than I probably deserve. And, remain on the planet, pretty grateful to be here. But the line of demarcation is the door to tolerance in that program requires at least a modicum of belief of some sort. The door to tolerance and full acceptance of you as a person. Even in that incredibly liberal room, all right? I don't think we had more than a couple of Republicans ever show up in that room. We had a few, but not very many,
Yeah.
all right? And I doubt if we ever had too many people without at least a 4-year degree in the room.
That's probably true.
And with a degree of economic security and all the other things that go with a upscale Washington, D.C. life. That's not the world at large. We lived there, and I still live here in Bethesda in a bubble. All right. A lot of stuff that goes on in the real world would not, could not, and didn't go on in that room. I mean, how did I sit down there for all those years? I mean, all I had to do was avoid their step meeting, and then some idiot put a big book meeting into the mix there later on, and that meant that, well, 2 out of the 5 days I couldn't go there. All right. But the other days I went there, and as you know, I saw my friends, good friends, and after the meeting we sat around in the coffee place at 15th and M and bullshat and yelled, and I heard everybody's stories about their disappointments and career catastrophes and everything else. All right. It was great in its own way. But I finally had to come to the conclusion that even there, in that intensely incredible liberal environment, with fine, highly educated, and well-intentioned people such as yourself, that in essence, I had no home there because I did not share any spiritual belief whatsoever. And I'm sure you know enough about me to know that that's a fact.
No, I do. I do. Well, that brings up another point. I've certainly been to meetings where tolerance for any kind of non-belief or belief other than what they said was you're supposed to believe was rampant, and it made me uncomfortable. To me, there's always the option of just, okay, I'm not going to go to that meeting anymore. All right.
Right.
Now, I understand that in part is because I've always lived in a urban environment. All right. And I lived either in DC or in Philadelphia, and I can find a meeting that's much more tolerant. I can always find that. And in a less urban environment, that's more difficult. But I think it's getting easier now. There are Zoom meetings all over the world now you can join, and so I think that option is available. And maybe it's not the most ideal option, but I have had to do it. I've had to say there are meetings, for example, that they have rules. You can never talk about drugs, all right, or your experiences with drugs. Well, I don't stick around at those meetings. I think that's ridiculous, because experiences with drugs are related to alcoholism, and so that's ridiculous. It's ridiculous to have rules like that. So
alcohol's a drug.
That option is available too. Just go to a different meeting.
Right. Can I relate an experience I had?
Are you really giving us an option?
What?
Are you really giving us an option?
No.
Okay.
I mean, I'm going to say what I think it's pretty obvious that I'm going to say whatever the fuck I want to say. Anyway.
Yeah.
So that's pretty well established here. But a few years back, I was working on a book project, my yet to be published second book. And I was up in my college town in probably one of the most liberal places you could imagine, Putney, Vermont. Currently home of the Putney School, and a lot of folks with a lot more money than I could ever dream of, tucked away in the hills there, living their wonderful life in the summer rather than the sweat box here in Washington. So I was up there, and I met with an old college friend of mine who still lives relatively nearby, and he was having some difficulties. And I was able to sit with him and talk about some things with him. I was having a wonderful time. And then I noticed that there was something. I just looked. I didn't really want to go to an AA meeting at all, right? But I noticed that there was a meeting catty-cornered across the street, across Route 5 in Putney, from the campus of my defunct hippie school, which is now a place was called Wyndham College. It's now called Landmark College, which appropriately enough is a school for dyslexics. Just when I was there, all our dyslexia was self-induced. We were a little scattered. But across the street's a Unitarian church. I said, "Oh, great, a Unitarian church. I won't have to listen to any of that stuff at a Unitarian church." So I went out of my way to go to this meeting at 6:30 or 7 p.m. on a summer afternoon, and walked in there and introduced myself. And it became evident very quickly that I was in the wrong place. But I was being polite, and I didn't walk out. But when they handed me that book and asked me to read out of it, I said, "I'm very sorry, I can't do that. I'm an atheist, and I can't read that. I'm very sorry." At which point, I've had this happen to me in other contexts. I'd use the same analogy. It's like you're sitting in the dock at Nuremberg, and all of a sudden, they're all on the prosecution team, and you are, Herman Goring, okay? That's the kind of look they're giving you, right? And I sort of decided I'm going to make it a test. And after the meeting, I tried to talk to a couple of people. They looked at me like I was a pane of glass. They would not speak to me. And these people looked like hill hippies in their
Yeah.
overalls,
Yeah.
Michael. And, they were more fundamentalists than any people I'd seen in D.C. in a long.
Mhm.
And that's what goes on in the hinterland.
Yeah.
And we have people that we know who are persecuted, who are abused, who are mishandled, and some of whom have gone out and gotten drunk and died.
Mhm.
Right? I've seen it happen.
Mhm.
Now, did that happen in the basement of the AME Church on M Street in Northwest Washington? Not to my knowledge.
Right.
That's a pretty tolerant place.
Mhm.
And I developed some good friendships there with people who I don't agree with about hardly anything.
Right.
Right? So what you're saying is possible, but it's atypical for many people of our persuasion
Okay.
who
No,
are
and yeah,
abused and persecuted.
right.
Yeah, I'd like to respond a little bit to what you
Sure.
said, Dennis.
Mhm.
I've had several people over the years defend AA when I've questioned it,
Mhm.
pointing out that word suggested.
Mhm.
These are steps we suggest you take, and I think that's bullshit, because I think that word is thrown in there as a defense mechanism, but it's not reality. The
Mhm.
reality is you go to an AA meeting, all the meetings I've been to, and that goes from the urban settings in New York City to my rural roots out here in Indiana. Uh, they're really not suggested.
Mhm.
You're really supposed to do those steps. You're supposed to work those steps. Another word that I always made me cringe a little bit when say, oh, I'm working the steps.
Mhm.
Every sponsor I've had from New York City to Indiana has said, we're gonna sit down, we're gonna work the steps together. And if I ever at the time I never really had the balls to say, wait a minute, it says here suggested.
Mhm.
Why are you saying I have to do this? Because that question never really comes up. I mean, the reality of AA is that anybody who comes to AA, you read, out here at least, every meeting I've been to, they read how it works, begin the meeting. And that is the essence of the AA Bible right there,
Mhm.
and reading that over and over and over again, there's no way you can interpret that as being a suggestion.
Okay.
It's part of the plan. It's part of the program. This is what you do when you come to AA.
Yeah.
Now I understand the positive approach that you've taken, and I appreciate that. I mean, you've made a really positive interpretation of all this stuff. Um, but a lot of that is because I get the impression that you and John and a lot of other people use AA as group therapy. I mean, that's the essence of our secular AA Zoom meetings, our secular Zoom meetings. Sorry, John, I threw AA in there.
Mhm.
They're
Our
not
secular
AA. Our
Zoom meetings.
meeting's not an AA.
It's essentially the group therapy, the aspect of one alcoholic talking to another. The roots of the program.
Yeah.
Uh, and you've done that. I think you've like you said, you left a lot of things behind that you didn't agree with. Uh, and I think that word spirituality is again I don't know how to define it either, but and that's one reason I don't use the word, because I don't really have a good explanation of it. But anytime I hear that, I think, well, perhaps it's the home team advantage. When you're I mean, there's something there. I don't know how to describe it, but there's always a home team advantage when you're with like-minded people in the same place, cheering for the same goal.
Mhm.
It's going to happen, and it happens because of something. But I don't know if it's, and I don't think that's anything I could pray to. I mean, it's something I can experience and identify, but it is something there, and I agree with that. I think there is something, I don't think it's something I could pray to in my my personal feeling about
Mhm.
it. Anyway, I wanted to make sure that I respond to the
Yeah.
word suggestion, because that's it's not real. I mean, yeah, it's in
It's
there.
not.
I mean, it's in black and white. It's typed in there, but it's not really used.
Okay. I mean, I get what you're saying, and this is one reason why when I sponsor people, and I haven't sponsored many people, but I, it's one reason I don't do that. I talk about my own experiences. This is how I have worked. Some of have worked. I mean, I have benefited from some of the steps. Okay, and I will explain to them. This is what I did. Okay, and it's up to you, but this is what I did. All right. I always limit everything to my own experience. I don't like the approach of, okay, these are the steps, and
Well,
you have to do this now, and you have to do this now. Read this step 5 times or whatever. I mean, and I
But you're
understand
rare.
there
You're
are ways
rare in that.
to
yeah,
do that,
Dennis,
and I think that's a
Dennis.
terrible thing. But what I'm
Oh,
saying is that's people. Okay, that's not the program. All right.
Yeah. Yeah.
well,
And
look,
one of the things, just to answer another point that both of you have made, is that I, I don't really give a fuck about what people think of me either. You know, I mean, I don't care that someone is judging me, for example, because I don't have a sponsor. Okay, it used to bother me, but it's like, what is it? Business is of theirs, and I am sober. Okay, and I have found a way to do it without having to have a sponsor telling me what to do all the time. All right. And okay, yeah, that rubs some people the wrong way, but who cares? I mean, why should I care about that? And so you're talking about a lot of peer pressure here, which is
Yeah.
what really pushes people past the, okay, this is suggested.
well,
It pushes people into, well, I got to do this. But if you can get through that and say, it really is suggested, and
Well,
I
what else did you
because
leave behind?
it's
You
not
mentioned
suggested.
that other
It's
than people
not
telling you
suggested.
not to take your meds, what else did you leave behind when you mentioned that you left
sponsor,
things behind and took the things that you needed? What was it you left
sponsorship,
behind?
sponsorship. Um, I don't know. I don't believe in the concept of God that a lot of people push at meetings. I mean, I do believe that the program it was originally based on a Judeo-Christian God, and I don't believe in that. Um, I don't
Well, then
know. I mean,
how do you rectify all those steps that mention God? I mean, how does that work for
as
you?
you understood it, as you understood it. I understand the concept of God differently than other
But that's
people.
still a concept of God. That's still your
It is
understanding. I
a
mean,
concept
that's
of
still
God.
God,
It is,
right?
but God is just a word to me. I mean, it's just okay. It's my own concept. Yes, I buy into that, and yes, and
Yeah.
that's why I differ from you guys, and I understand why that makes it
Yeah.
difficult for you. I
Well,
do.
now, do you think that helps you? Do you really think that that's an advantage for you to have that? And I mean, does that make it easier to stay sober and go to AA meetings and be okay with that?
Just which make it easier. The fact that
That belief, having that belief. I mean, do you think that's an advantage? So, if, in other words, do you think I'm disadvantaged because I don't have
no,
that?
I don't think you're disadvantaged because
I mean,
no, and that's why I guess I went through what said I because you and John, I can tell you rely on the same kinds of things that I do to stay sober. Okay, the power of example,
yeah,
the learning to
Well, it's
share, the being
right,
abstinence, helping
Dennis.
others.
That's because
yeah, yeah.
it's
So you're
only
not
the real
disadvantaged.
things that
I mean,
do help keep you
yeah,
sober.
you're not disadvantaged, and
Yeah.
I don't necessarily think you're disadvantaged by not following the steps either.
Well,
I mean,
how do you think you can take that and help other people? I mean, you said before that, there's a lot of people that are scared away from AA because of our mischaracterizations of AA. Well, then how is your characterization of AA, which is, I think a very reasonable way of looking at AA? How can you communicate that to all the people that go to a meeting and start reading how it works? And I mean, you've got it figured out. It sounds good. It sounds really good.
I go to meetings where how it works is read all the time too, and I just I take what I leave and leave the rest, and that's what I tell people that I do. I don't tell people to do that. I just say this is my experience.
Yeah.
I take what I need and I leave the rest, and I don't fight with it either. I mean, I don't argue with it, okay?
Yeah.
Because that doesn't do me any good. All right. I mean, I just
in my experience, I did that. I feel that I did that. I think that I did that too for a long time. For a good solid 10 years of this time of my sobriety, my 18 plus years this time. And I went along with that. I left behind what I didn't think was working for me, and I took what I thought was good, but I got to a point where I had to be honest about all the rest of it that was still there. I mean, I couldn't stand there and pretend anymore. And I think that was my part of my mission, was to express that to people. That wait a minute, you don't have to put up with this. You don't have to pretend. You don't have to pretend for 10 years. Why don't you get to this point now and take what you need and leave, just literally leave all that stuff behind,
Dennis, they really meant what they said when they said, rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our path. And then they say, oh, there are some of these unfortunates who are so defective that they can't embrace what we're presenting to them.
That always made me slink down in my chair just a little bit.
And they end, Dennis, and they say, would or could. I mean, you will be helped, you will be saved, would or could if he were sought. Horseshit.
Okay, well, I mean, I understand why that's uncomfortable to you, but I when it says would or could or if he were sought, I interpret that just differently maybe than other people do. That a God of my understanding is necessary for me, is helpful for me to stay sober, and so I should seek that. And that's
Dennis,
that's
are
all.
you familiar with a guy by the name of Father? Is the name Father Ernest Dowling ring a bell with you? Ernest Dowling.
Yeah.
SJ. Father Ernest Dowling. Society of Jesus. SJ. Right? He sought out Bill Wilson in his clubhouse in 1941 and reinforced in Wilson the Stations of the Cross and the other fundamental elements of Catholic faith, which were reinforced in Bill Wilson's awful book, known as the 12 and 12. I know what animated them, all right? It was no joke in Dr. Bob's kitchen when you had to get on your knees and profess a belief in God before you were allowed to attend Dr. Bob's meeting in that kitchen. Now, you can say, well, things changed a bit after that. But roots are roots. Ideas are ideas.
Right.
And they were serious about their ideas. And you cannot rationalize those books or those ideas to someone like myself, who has been a utterly and absolutely convinced atheist since age 12. All right? I am thoroughly and most certainly going to hell in their definition. And I'm very
you're already
pleased.
in hell, John. Come on.
Well, I'm living in Washington, D.C. in the summertime, watching the fucking Republican National Convention on HGTV, where I can see every pore of their ignorant faces. So of course I've been in hell this
Right.
week.
And didn't Dante have
When I
one of
woke
those
up this
places
morning
just
after his
like that?
fucking
Right.
speech, okay, well, I felt better because I saw that the ignorant rabble can be defeated in the end. So, I mean, yeah, of course I've lived in hell, all right? But at least it's a world of the creation of my own senses and capabilities.
Right.
I've
Well,
had experiences that I can't explain, Dennis.
yeah,
I'm going to do an episode very soon on mystery and atheism
I look
in
forward to that one.
AA. You will. I've got a good story. I've got a million
I
stories.
look forward to that.
I've got a good story I'll be telling there about some of my experiences in hospitals,
Hmm.
none of which included a bright white light, a
Right.
revelation, or other, but I've had some pretty profound experiences being in some extreme circumstances,
Yeah.
which I understand that people need things to help get them through. That's why I have absolutely no argument with the method that you've used to produce the wonderful life you have these past 41 years. None whatsoever. Okay. It's terrific. The same way with some of our other old and dear friends who I know and love, whose beliefs are much more extreme than yours. All right? At least to my, way of thinking.
Right.
So, what are we arguing about? You and I are arguing about nothing. What I'm arguing about in the global sense is that I see people oppressed, people disturbed, people condescended to, people abused by that program when they're
Okay.
exposed to it.
Yeah. Well,
I see it all the
right.
time.
Well, what I guess where I disagree with you on that is you do see that, and I've seen it too, but they're not being oppressed by the program. They're being oppressed by people who just don't know what the hell they're talking about.
What, to an
And
atheist, would or could if he is not oppression.
I
You
if
tell
you
me
take
that
it that
would
way,
or could, that if he were sought, is not oppression to me.
I guess if you take it that way,
That's an oppressive statement. I may as well be in Scientology when I hear stuff like that.
I get it. I mean, I
Well,
understand why. And I don't
yeah.
dispute.
I don't tolerate it.
Right. I don't dispute that you guys probably need a different way to go. I mean, and that's
Yeah.
fine. And
Well, and I can appreciate your perspective, Dennis. I mean, I think in a way you've come up with a light, and
Yeah,
and
it's
and
good.
and,
It's
and
good.
that's not a bad thing.
It's like
And I think that would be very
Judaism.
helpful
The
to a
bigger,
lot
the
of
better.
people that are borderline, on the fence about whether they want to go full blown fundamentalist AA or they want to go full blown secular sobriety. I mean, I think that you've found a nice middle ground
well, I just
that
hope.
sounds comfortable, and I think it would
Right.
probably be comfortable for a lot of people.
Yeah. And I think that's true. And I just I think that I hope that those people are not listening to you guys and getting scared away by the harsher language about the program.
Yeah, or they're listening to how it
Well,
works and not
as I
being
told
scared
you,
away by
Dennis,
that. I mean,
I
Right.
doubt if many bedrock believers are going to have their beliefs shattered by the Sober Atheist
No,
podcast.
but the thing is, I'm not a bedrock
I
believer,
don't
and I
think
think there are
I
many
don't
people
think
who
so.
aren't, who might get scared away. And
Right. Well,
I know of people that have been scared away by other, there's other YouTube channels, other books that talk about, AA without God and AA, AA doesn't work and AA is a cult. And
no,
there are
AA
people
works
that
for
get scared
people
away
that
by that
believe in
stuff.
it. Yeah, I mean, it worked for you. Am I
Yeah.
telling you it didn't work for you?
No,
I
no,
saw it work for you with my own eyes. I saw it. It worked
right.
for you.
well, it worked for
Okay.
you, John. It worked for
It worked
me.
for me. My
I mean,
friends
You guys for a
worked for
while.
me.
Yeah.
My friends worked for me. And when I first came in, well, and what really got me through was our atheist agnostic meeting that was started by the late Maxine Brown and Tom Jones in
Mhm.
September of 1988. That's
Now,
what
did
really
those
got.
meetings still do 12 steps and readings
No,
and everything else? I mean,
not the secular meeting that I helped found. Okay, it's still listed in that book, which is why I can't go there anymore, because I refuse to have anything to do with anything that's listed in their book.
Mhm.
I don't do that, all right, anymore. I finally came to the realization I was being a hypocrite by doing that, because I had some people rightly call me out on that, because look, I'm on the left wing of this whole thing. I'm going to this convention of atheists and agnostics, so-called atheists and agnostics in recovery in Orlando, and giving a presentation and having a panel, a forum with a friend of mine from Paris, who Michael knows pretty well.
You're talking about the secular AA conference, right?
That's what they call it, but it's really something else. But the I'm viewed as an extremist, all
Mhm.
right, even amongst some of my own. So that's okay. You know why? Because I get messages from people rather frequently, not constantly, and it goes something like this: I'm so grateful you spoke up, because I can't. I'm afraid to speak up about
Mhm.
that around them. I've had that happen to me numerous times. I've also had people that say they're atheists that accuse me of trying to take away their spiritual center. Okay. Have I grabbed your spiritual center and ripped it out of your chest, Dennis?
No,
I
you
don't think
haven't.
so. I
Not
have
quite.
no desire to do such a thing. I haven't burned a church this month either.
No.
So it's like anything else in America. When you are in a minority, you get oppressed.
Mhm.
All right. I heard a story about a trans person yesterday
Mhm.
who is terrified. Someone told me about a conversation they had with a trans person who has become completely terrified these last months
Mhm.
because of what might happen to that person come January.
Right.
All right. The same thing goes through the mind of people who hold minority, uncompromising views in this country everywhere they go. And the
Mhm.
further you get outside of places like the Beltway, where I live, the worse it gets.
Mhm.
Okay. So we're a minority. All right. And we're here to help articulate the concerns of a minority and possibly share the fact that we've had long and productive lives being the way we are with no problems whatsoever.
Right.
I mean, not without problems. I had all kinds of problems in my life, but I learned how to deal with them as a sober person.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
it's we're I don't think we're arguing about first principles of sobriety. I think
No.
we agree
I,
on those.
that's absolutely.
Okay.
I believe.
Yeah, it still all comes down to abstinence and community is
No, I
essentially what
agree.
what
That's
we're
true.
all doing.
Abstinence, community, sharing, helping others. I mean,
Yeah.
Right.
that's
Right.
absolutely the bedrock of it.
Yeah.
And I agree with that. And I just want to make
Yeah.
a point. Also, just acknowledge what Michael, what you said about honesty. I get that too, and I take that point that if it becomes so uncomfortable for you to listen to the stuff and to be there, and the readings and everything, and it becomes just too much of a discord. I get that. I mean, if you need to find a different way, the way that I've dealt with that is just I'll do the readings, I'll listen to the readings, but I don't agree with them all. I just put it aside. And I think I just saying that's a different way to do it. And you could call that dishonest, I suppose, but it's a different way to do it, but I also understand where you're coming from on that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Why
and
it's too much discourse.
And if it works, it works, man. I mean,
right, and
bottom line, yeah.
yeah, this has been a great opportunity to discuss something in a civilized, pretty
Yeah.
much civilized way with, somebody I disagree with, but who's also a well-intentioned and good person. And we can't forget, I've told you some stories about experiences I had with some of those people who I certainly don't have anything in common with in
Mhm.
terms of theology, who did remarkably kind things for
Oh,
me,
absolutely.
who I
Mhm.
met there. All right. So, it we're not talking about bad people. I'm talking about bad ideas,
Okay, I get that.
effective,
Right.
effective, condescending,
Right.
pejorative, uh, logically insupportable and untrue things. And I say categorically here because, well, we're paying for the podcast. I we can say whatever the fuck we want until, well, maybe January it'll be a whole different story when when Stephen Miller puts the wire up in North Dakota. I don't know if it's going to be just for immigrants. So,
Mhm.
but until we get hauled away from our microphones, we're going to stand up for people who we feel are being oppressed. And that's all we're about. We're not
Okay.
about doing anything about anything that helps someone else in another context. No
That's
problem.
good. I appreciate that. I appreciate that.
Okay.
And I'll go
And
right back
we're,
at you on what you said, because I feel the same way about you, John. You've helped a lot of people. You helped me more than I think you realize.
well,
And
I
even
I
though there were
appreciate
many things that you said at meetings, even that I disagreed with, you still helped me immensely.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I never hid my light under their Christian bushel, I'm
No,
afraid.
you didn't.
I was pretty transparent. But the lives that we've led, they might not have been totally exemplary, but they've certainly been satisfactory,
Oh, absolutely.
and they've been satisfactory for the same reason.
Right.
Okay. Uh, so on that, n- on that positive note, um, I think we've had a pretty good
I,
conversation with an exchange.
this has helped me a lot too, because it's helped crystallize my own views of recovery,
Oh,
and so
but
that's been
just
very helpful
don't
to me,
it.
and it's
Yeah,
been great
right,
talking to you guys.
right. Well, if you think atheists are not going to be oppressed, just wait for January
I know.
20th or whatever it's going to be, and what might happen to us after that.
I know.
That'll be something to watch. I
Right.
won't be watching though. I'm going to be participating
Okay.
in some way.
And also, can I point out that the people who I have admired most in my years of experience in AA have had a very similar perspective as yours, Dennis,
Oh,
and
thanks.
and it's always been a positive example for me. It's what kept me sticking around for a long time even though I disagree with a lot of it, but just having that positive perspective
Mhm.
and that sense of hope that you express
Right.
is
Hope,
powerful. I mean
I
hope,
that
think that's a
yeah
very good
hope.
concept.
When
Yes.
yeah. I
when
mean
when when
and I
Michael
appreciate
mentions,
that. I
Yes,
yeah,
appreciate.
John. Thank you, Michael. Thank you.
Michael mentions hope, I know we're coming close to the end of
Yes,
the hour because
right. I gather that.
he's a man from hope. And we really appreciate you coming on and
Thanks.
engaging with us in this way.
I
And
appreciate the opportunity. I'm glad. I thought at first I might be coming into the lion's den, but it hasn't been that experience at all.
no, we didn't accuse you of anything. All
Yeah,
right.
yeah. John Huey's a pussycat. He's no lion. Come
I know. I'm just nasty
on.
to certain people on Facebook, but not you.
I'm just a
Okay.
caddy.
Okay.
I just carry his
All
bags
right.
for him.
Okay. All right. Michael's a lot more than that because Michael has given us some of the essence of what we're about here. quite
Yes,
a
it
bit of
is.
it actually. And we like to end if you want to join us
I
in a
do.
ritual
Yeah.
that we have at the end, you can, because what do we say at the end of our podcast, Michael?
Peace and love.
And we
Peace and
say
love.
peace
Peace
and
and
love
love.
to
Peace and
Peace
love.
you,
and love.
and
Yep.
peace and love to you, Mr. Walsh. It's
Peace and
been a
love to
pleasure,
both of you.
and
I've
and
enjoyed
we
this.
love and we love you.
Oh,
Okay,
thank you.
in a secular
I
kind of
get it.
way.
Yes, I get it.
Okay, all right.
I've enjoyed this very
See ya.
much.
Bye bye.